Well, here's some good news. Right out of the gate, some waste streams are mostly exempt or excluded from dangerous waste rules because there are pathways in place for how to manage them. Things like used oil, car batteries, or scrap metal.
Some wastes that you have in your facility will designate as dangerous wastes, but are excluded from the dangerous waste rules, which means that you don't have to manage them as dangerous waste. Some examples of this could be used oil. If you properly manage used oil, it is not considered a dangerous waste, but you have to properly manage it.
Come on in here.
In this room, what Bruce has done is he's put his excluded or exempt waste. So it's separate from his hazardous waste, and that way he doesn't cross-contaminate.
We keep our antifreeze waste and our oil waste here.
Right at the very beginning of the regulations, we have a list of things that are excluded or exempted from the regulations. And some of the examples are like scrap metal.
Spent lead-acid batteries.
We have an exclusion for antifreeze.
You know, why? Because we want to reuse it.
And those exemptions, it's important that you're managing the waste as the exemption would ask. For example, used oil needs to be closed and it needs to be labeled on site. That's to make sure that you know you've got a used oil barrel that you're planning on recycling.
And when you have questions about the exclusions, call your regional office and they'll be happy to help you answer those questions.
So let's get back to our example here at the auto body repair shop. Look around. You'll find paints, solvents, dirty rags. Some people might be tempted to just dump some of this stuff in the trash or down the sink. Please no. Before you throw anything into the sink or the trash, you must determine whether it might be dangerous waste.
There are 3 categories of dangerous waste that are regulated by the state of Washington. They are, number 1, listed, which means the waste contains specific chemicals that are on a list.
As you start to look at waste designation, one of the first things you look at is whether or not your waste is listed. In the regulations, there's a long, healthy list of what is and what isn't considered listed.
There's one set of waste that is simply a list of chemicals, and there's another set that's a list of processes. So you need to think about what you do at your shop and check on those lists to determine if either the chemicals or the processes are on either of those lists. And then if you have them, you would know that you have a listed waste.
For example, solvents that are used to clean parts. Certain solvents are listed. Certain activities create listed waste. So if I'm doing aluminum smelting, I create a listed waste. I don't have to go down the path of trying to figure out if it's toxic or not. I know it is because it's listed.
The second group is waste that are regulated because they have certain risk characteristics. They are ignitable, corrosive, reactive, or toxic.
So there are 4 primary characteristics. Ignitability, you take it to a lab or look at the material safety data sheet. If it has a flash point below 140 degrees Fahrenheit, that's ignitable. Another characteristic is corrosivity. And with corrosivity, what you're looking at is the pH. Third thing we're going to look at as far as characteristics go is reactivity. So does it spontaneously combust? And then the fourth one is toxicity.
And finally, there are those wastes that are Washington state criteria wastes because our state's rules are more protective than the federal government's rules.
And under the federal program, EPA and the RCRA program, they have what's called hazardous waste. So you have the characteristic wastes and listed wastes. And we adopt those and we recognize those as hazardous waste. But we recognize more waste as, say, hazardous waste than what EPA does, and we call those state-only waste. So dangerous waste includes everything that the state considers, quote, hazardous waste, plus everything that EPA considers hazardous waste.
A waste code that begins with the letters P, U, K, or F means the waste is a listed waste. Remember, a listed waste is one that is specifically called out in the dangerous waste regulations. P and U codes are reserved for discarded chemical products. Unused products have become waste and only contain one active ingredient. P-coded wastes are more toxic than U. P and U codes aren't that common and come mainly from labs or medical facilities. The K codes are specific to certain industries, like pulp and paper mills, wood preservation, iron and steel production, and a few others. If you're not in one of these specific industries, you're probably in the clear on K-coded wastes. You can refer to the regulations for a complete list of the K-code descriptions. The most common listed waste codes are the F codes.
F codes are definitely the most common. F codes include, in the first 5 segments, used solvents.
Solvents are used in all different types of industries, painting and manufacturing and electronics, for cleaning the electronic wafers, gas stations, mechanics, everybody uses solvents.
F001 through F005, we list certain chemicals, okay? After that, we list certain industries again. So what we do is we go and we look in F01, 2, 3, 4, or 5 to find out if any of the chemicals used here happen to be in that list.
Once you've determined whether your waste qualifies for any of the listed codes, P, U, K, or F, you need to know what additional risks may be posed by your waste. Is it ignitable, corrosive, reactive, or toxic? These are known as the characteristic wastes.
And that means that there's a particular characteristic associated with your waste. You can use either generator knowledge. For example, I have a very flammable solvent and I'm making it very dirty, but it's still going to be extremely flammable. You could apply a flammable code or an ignitable code because you're aware of the process that generated that waste. Or if you're not sure, you could do an analytical test.
There are tests to determine whether your waste is ignitable or corrosive. Reactive designation is done through knowledge of the chemicals. There is no test. You can refer to the regulations. As for toxicity, there are currently 40 chemicals that are on the federal D list: heavy metals, pesticides, and organic chemicals, and each one has a specific concentration level at which it gets regulated. If your waste contains one of these 40 chemicals and its concentration is greater than the threshold level, bam, you need to tag it with the appropriate D code.
To look at toxicity, what we do is we get a sample, we prepare it in a certain way that kind of mimes or mimics the conditions in a landfill. So it's kind of an acidic preparation. And then we analyze it to see what comes out, like what is leaching out. It's called a toxicity characteristic leachate procedure. And so you run that TCLP test to figure out whether or not you've got something that's toxic.
One of the other important aspects and a benefit of making sure that you correctly designate your waste is that you won't be mixing wastes. And mixing wastes can be bad for a variety of reasons. If you mix a hazardous waste with a non-hazardous waste, it's now all hazardous waste. You can greatly increase the cost and the volume associated with dealing with that waste when it might not be necessary, when you might not have to do that. You also want to make sure that you're not mixing incompatible wastes. You don't want to put an acid with a base and just watch the reaction. You need to make sure that it goes to the right spot and that they're stored with other like materials.